Have you ever planted something the gardening books told you to coddle, watered it, fertilized it, fussed over it, and watched it slowly weaken and die? Here's what nobody tells you. A small group of garden plants don't want any of that. They evolved on dry hillsides, in poor soil, in conditions where care would have killed them. And the modern gardening advice that works perfectly for tomatoes is quietly destroying them. By the end of this video, you'll know the 10 that work this way. And number 1 has been quietly building soil in European gardens for 200 years. Subscribe. Let's start with the one almost everyone kills. 1. The lavender that grew weaker the better you treated it. Have you ever bought a beautiful lavender plant from the nursery, brought it home, planted it in rich soil with good compost, and watched it die within a year? Here's what nobody tells you. You didn't kill it through neglect. You killed it with kindness. Lavender evolved on the rocky Mediterranean hillsides of Provence, southern Spain, and Greece. Researchers at the University of Avignon have documented that lavender produces its signature aromatic oils as a stress response. The harder the conditions, the more oil the plant makes. Rich soil and regular water tell the plant it doesn't need to produce those oils. The plant relaxes. The scent fades. The roots rot. Plant lavender in poor, sandy, rocky soil. Water once after transplanting. Then leave it alone for 10 years. The harder you let it work, the more aromatic it becomes. But she's not even the most extreme example of this pattern. Number 2 is 2. The herb you've been overwatering for years. Have you ever bought a rosemary plant at the grocery store, brought it home with high hopes, and watched it slowly turn brown from the bottom up? Here's what most gardeners don't realize. Rosemary doesn't die from cold. It dies from love, specifically from water. Like lavender, rosemary is a Mediterranean shrub from harsh hillside conditions. Studies from the Spanish National Research Council have shown that rosemary's essential oil content drops by as much as 40% when the plant is grown in rich, irrigated conditions versus dry, lean soil. The flavor weakens, the plant softens. Root rot follows within 2 seasons. Plant rosemary in lean, sandy soil. Skip the compost. Water sparingly, only during prolonged drought. The bush you forget about for 10 years produces stronger herb than the one you tend every weekend. 3. The plant we've been taught to fear. Have you ever been warned about mint, told never to plant it in the ground because it spreads, treated it like a problem to contain? Here's what nobody tells you. Mint isn't aggressive because it's invasive. It's aggressive because it's trying to escape the conditions you keep creating for it. Research from the University of Tehran on mentha species has documented that mint produces its most concentrated essential oils. Menthol, menthone, the compounds modern medicine uses for IBS and digestive relief. Under stress conditions, drought stress, soil stress, cutting stress, the more you cut mint back, the more vigorously it regrows. The harder you let it work, the more medicinal it becomes. Plant mint in a contained spot. Cut it back hard every 6 weeks. Don't water it once established. The plant you've been told to fear is one of the most studied medicinal herbs on earth. 4. The bulb you've been killing in spring. Have you ever planted garlic in the fall, dutifully watered and fertilized it through spring, and harvested small, weak bulbs you couldn't understand? Here's what nobody tells you. You did everything wrong, and the gardening books told you to. Garlic is a winter-dormant crop that builds its root system in cold, undisturbed soil. Research from the Penn State Extension has shown that spring fertilization, particularly with high-nitrogen fertilizers, pushes garlic into excess leaf growth at the expense of bulb development. Late spring watering, as the bulbs are sizing up, splits and rots them. The most productive garlic in the world is grown by farmers who plant in October, mulch heavily, and don't touch the bed again until July. Plant garlic cloves in fall. Mulch heavily. Don't water in spring. Don't fertilize. The bed you forgot existed for 9 months produces the strongest bulbs you'll ever harvest. And hey, if any of this is changing how you see your garden, hit subscribe. That's how we get this out to more gardeners who actually want to know what their plants are trying to tell them. 5. The tuber that wants to take over. Have you ever read a gardening warning telling you not to plant sunchokes because they'll spread and you'll never get rid of them? Here's where it gets interesting. That warning is correct, and it's exactly why you should plant them. Sunchokes, Helianthus tuberosus, are a native North American perennial that USDA researchers have studied as a low-input survival crop since the 1970s. One tuber planted in spring produces 5 to 10 pounds of tubers by fall. Leave a few in the ground over winter, and next year you have 20 pounds. The year after, 50. The plant has no interest in your care. It doesn't need fertilizer, doesn't need consistent water, doesn't care if you forget it exists. Plant a few tubers in a corner you don't care about. Don't water them, don't dig the bed carefully. The plant that's impossible to get rid of is the one that feeds you forever. 6. The root you can't kill if you tried. Have you ever tried to remove horseradish from a garden? Dug it up, pulled out what you thought was the whole root, and watched 5 new plants emerge the following spring? Here's what most gardeners never figure out. Horseradish doesn't survive damage. It thrives on it. Research published in agricultural journals has documented that horseradish roots produce their highest concentrations of glucosinolates, the pungent compounds that make the root medicinal and flavorful, in response to physical damage and environmental stress. Mild winters and gentle care produce mild roots. Brutal winters and damaged plants produce roots so pungent they bring tears to your eyes across the kitchen. Plant one root in a corner of your yard. Never water it, never fertilize it. The plant you can't accidentally kill is the one that produces medicine for 30 years. 7. The bed that hates being managed. Have you ever planted an asparagus bed, weeded it carefully, watered it weekly, harvested generously for the first 2 years, and watched production drop off by year 4? Here's what nobody tells you. You loved it to death. Asparagus has shallow, brittle roots that are damaged by hand weeding. Cornell Extension research has documented that beds maintained with aggressive cultivation produce 30 to 50% less than beds left under heavy permanent mulch. Overharvesting in years 2 and 3 weakens the crowns for the next decade. The most productive asparagus beds in the world are ones the gardener basically forgot about. Mulched heavily once a year, harvested for 6 weeks each spring, left untouched for the other 46. Mulch your asparagus heavily. Stop weeding it. Don't water it. The bed you ignore for 20 years outproduces the one you tend every weekend. 8. The plant the cold makes stronger. Have you ever fertilized rhubarb in spring, hoping for bigger stalks, and watched the plant produce thin, pale, almost flavorless growth? Here's where it gets interesting. Rhubarb is one of the only food crops in your garden that gets better the worse your conditions are. The world's largest, most productive rhubarb plants are not in California or in greenhouses. They're in Scotland, Sweden, and the Netherlands, places with short summers, acidic soil, and almost no gardener attention. The University of Aberdeen has documented that cold stress and nutrient-poor conditions produce higher concentrations of the malic and oxalic acids that give rhubarb its flavor and structural integrity. Plant rhubarb. Mulch it once in fall. Don't water unless drought lasts 3 weeks. The plant designed for harsh climates produces for 20 years when you let it suffer. 9. The tree the world cut back to make stronger. Have you ever planted a fruit tree, pruned it carefully every winter, fertilized it in spring, sprayed it for pests, and gotten a modest harvest you weren't sure was worth the effort? Here's what almost no one knows. There's a tree that produces more fruit the more brutally you treat it. The mulberry. Traditional Asian mulberry growers, documented in agricultural research from China and Japan going back 2,000 years, practice coppicing. They cut the trees back to the trunk every few years. The trees respond by producing more fruit, more leaves, more growth than trees left to grow undisturbed. Modern arborists would call this practice extreme. The trees disagree. A mulberry tree planted and ignored produces 50 to 80 pounds of fruit per year by year 5. Coppiced periodically, it produces more. Plant a mulberry, water it the first year, then leave it alone for 50. The tree that thrives on damage is the one your grandchildren will eat from. 10. The plant that's been quietly building soil for 200 years. Have you ever bought bag after bag of fertilizer, year after year, to feed a garden that never seems quite rich enough? Here's what nobody tells you. There's a plant that does that work for free, for decades. And almost no one outside of permaculture circles knows what it is. Comfrey, Symphytum officinale, has a taproot that grows 10 to 15 feet into the subsoil, pulling up minerals from layers no other garden plant can reach. The Henry Doubleday Research Association in England has studied a sterile cultivar called Bocking 14 since the 1950s, documenting that one plant produces 15 to 20 pounds of mineral-rich leaves per year, cut down 5 or 6 times each season. Every cutting comes back faster and stronger than the last. The leaves work as fertilizer for everything around them. Comfrey beds planted in English gardens in the 1800s are still producing today. 2 centuries of mineral mining from a single plant that asked for nothing in return. Plant 1, Bocking 14 comfrey in a permanent spot. Cut it down whenever you need fertilizer. Never water it. The most underrated plant in gardening is the one that feeds your entire yard for the rest of your life. Now, and to be clear, this isn't an argument against gardening care. Tomatoes need water, peppers need fertilizer, lettuce needs attention. Most of what you grow will fail without your help. But the 10 plants in this video are different. They evolved in stress. They concentrate their value in response to scarcity. They produce medicine and food and fertility from conditions that would kill anything else. So the next time you reach for the hose or the fertilizer or the pruning shears, before you do anything, just look at what you're standing over. Some of these plants don't want your help. They want to be left alone to do their work. They're not weak plants. They're warriors.